Hey there, it's Dan from the Salty Sea, and I just want to thank everyone for their supportive words about my first two videos. I'll be returning with the Faction Rundown series and other strategic content, but I want to make sure to celebrate different aspects of this game on the channel. So I'm going to occasionally make what I call a Storyteller's Battle Report. My wife and I played a game of Untamed Beasts versus Slaanesh last week, and I'm going to present it to you in a rather unorthodox format. 8 worlds exist to feed the Great Devourer. The Great Hunt exists to consume 8 worlds. Thusly, existence ties together. Thusly, we have meaning, to hunt and be hunted. At the center of the 8 worlds is the knot that ties them together. At the center of the knot rules the Great Devourer. The center radiates. The hunt moves ever outward. We are outside, hunted. All things ride beside the Devourer or find themselves cornered, consumed. We can join him. We can prove ourselves to him. As the Devourer hunts, so must we hunt. Only through the circle of predator and prey can we ever truly know him. The beasts of death and frenzy know him best. They live their lives as he does his. By mastering them, we gain his respect. Head inward, to the center. The carnivores are your waypoints. Each lesser devourer brings you closer to the Great One. These were the words the prophet spoke around the fire, and young Cantrip Quickclaw had drank them eagerly. He'd been 6 when he'd first tried to subdue a predator. Younger than most, had he succeeded. The weasel had bit his hand and slipped his grasp, but the baby Cantrip hadn't cried. He'd enjoyed it, even licking his hand to taste the blood, reveling in the sting he felt. That encounter had foreshadowed most of his life among the untamed beasts. Never the most talented, never the most successful, but always best suited to a life lived in dedication to the Great Devourer. So it was that today he hunted with pride. Through sheer repetition and perseverance, he'd mastered the art of the hunt enough to be called Plains Runner, and thus be allowed to join the greatest hunters of his tribe in their pilgrimage to the 8 points. Cantrip crept alongside his stronger fellows, or his more perceptive ones, and never felt jealous, only exhilarated. The strongest of those fellows laid in wait in the tall grass next to him. Brock Armtusk was a mountain of a man who could still move like a savannah lion. He'd attained the rank of Heart-Eater, and he led this hunting party. Cantrip had looked up to him for years, and the man's prowess and charisma had been an inspiration to join this particular pilgrimage to the Great Devourer. Right now, at his command, they all fanned out in ambush. The hunt had brought them to a broken-down ruin in the heart of these rocky grasslands. It hadn't taken any great skill to spot the massive purple creature that now rested there. It had simply breezed through the grass in front of them. A long, slender jaw and delicate tongue had made some wonder if it was a predator worth hunting. But long, scythe-like arms, sprouting from its captivatingly human torso, made clear it might at least make a worthy foe. The eye-catching torso turned into a beast's body. Its legs were twisted and bizarre, but still managed to carry it swiftly through the fields, always close enough for them to pick its lilac scent, but always too far for them to catch. Finally, the creature had laid down to rest in these ruins, so they'd planned their ambush. The beast speaker Ugala on the right flank with her rock-tusk Crowler. Gantet, the first Fang, crept with his spear in the center of their formation, and Brock planned to sweep along the left flank behind the beast. Prey takers and plains runners, like Cantrip, were scattered across the flanks to prevent escape. If the fiendish creature noticed them, it made no indication. It simply frolicked in the center of the ruins, occasionally tasting the air with its anteater tongue. Cantrip felt Brock tense beside him for a moment before barking out the order to attack. But no sooner did the words leave his lips than the ruins erupted into chaos. Cloying, lavender haze misted across from them and around the creature, and it charged the center group. It bore down on a plains runner with unnatural speed, scythes striking and piercing. As the center group rallied to strike back at the creature, the nature of the trap became clear. Indigo and violet demons streaked out of the parting mists. Brock motioned for them to help the center group, but a she-demon with a sinuous purple steed already blocked their path. Cantred reached her first and hefted his weapons, 2 axes made from the jawbones of a timberwolf he'd caught and slain. His first successful hunt of a creature worthy of story. He swung them at the demonette, but she was fast and dodged him. Moments later, Stavros, a prey taker from their wing of the hunt, caught up to Cantred and swung his sawtooth blade at the demon. While she avoided his first strike, his second raked across her leg and bit into her steed, drawing blood the color of wine. The serpentine creature lashed out and knocked them both back. Past the demonette, Cantred could see that their center group would soon be overwhelmed by the ferocity of the prey beast, and the arrival of an armored man riding the same walking serpents he now contended with. But the roar of the prowler and the crack of Ukula's lash meant the far right were on the counterattack. His moment of distraction almost cost him his life. The demon raised her hands to strike Cantred, and to his surprise they ended in sharp pincers. They sought for his throat, until the cleave of Brock's massive bone sword severed the demon's arm at the elbow. As she recoiled, Brock lifted his weapon and swung again, beheading the steed she rode. It bucked her in its death throes, and Brock stabbed her through the chest before she could ready herself to retaliate. Bestial shrieks from across the ruins meant the prowler was gravely hurt, but Ukula had caught up to it, and Cantred could see her fighting alongside her pet. The 2 of them moving as one, woman and beast, managed to slay demon after demon. Cantred's heart raced to join them, but as he ran toward the fray, he was knocked to his back by another steed. This one was ridden by a second man in armor, of pearlescent white metal and gold. His hand held a many-tongued whip that lashed toward Cantred. He rolled to avoid it, and still a curved metal hook bit into his flesh. The pain shocked Cantred into clarity. How lucky was he to be battling on the sacred ground of the Great Devourer? When Cantred jumped to his feet, he saw the rider had been joined by another mounted demoness. She was taller than the first had been. Her figure was at once horrific and mesmerizing. Her eyes glowed gold against her violet skin. Her skull sprouted 2 horns that nearly came together in the shape of a heart, and she moved like liquid. Her run was so smooth Cantred could hardly tell she was moving at all, but she was upon them in a blink. Cantred swung his axe, but felt like an oaf in her presence, as she slipped out of his path easily. No, not easily. Playfully. Stavros joined the fight, swinging his sawtooth blade. He scored a raking hit on her leg, but she was unfazed, almost gleeful. Even on a mount that was bigger than both her opponents, she danced around them, singing and laughing all the while. Finally, when she toyed with them long enough, she darted forward. She batted Cantred's attack away with one claw, and he could only watch, stunned, as she stabbed her other claw into Stavros's chest. With a smile on her face, she tore the spear-like point out of him and reached forward to close her pincer around his throat. With surprising strength, she lifted him off the ground with one claw until they were at eye level. Cantred was shocked to see his huntmate's face of twisted agony transition to a delirious euphoria. Such was the effect of her presence that when her free claw ripped into the wound in Stavros's chest, the man's only response was to roll his eyes back into his head. And for his own part, Cantred simply stood, rooted to the spot, in horror at the scene. Was it horror, or was it fascination? Cantred didn't know, for when she finally tore the heart out of Stavros's chest and dropped him to the ground, Cantred didn't recoil. He simply watched. Would she consume the heart? Did these demons treat humans the same way the untamed beasts treated their prey? His reverie might have lasted forever, if Brock hadn't joined the fight. "I'll take your head, demon!" the big man yelled as he charged. The demon's human consort snapped whips at Brock, but he rolled forward without breaking his momentum, and the barbs ripped at nothing but air. He came up swinging. The demoness dodged, but her smile faded when Brock blocked her counterattack and headbutted her mount so hard it recoiled, taking her back several steps. His onslaught never halted, and the two dueled mere steps from Cantred. She pierced Brock's shoulder with a claw, and his axe tore a chunk out of her armored corset, drawing more wine-colored blood. The two traded blows and parries as the sky darkened and rumbled overhead, as if they'd drawn the attention of those otherworldly powers that gave the Great Devourer his strength. Finally, in a desperate lunge, the demon with the heart-shaped horns broke through Brock's defenses, spearing it through his fur cloak and into his heart. The hunt leader staggered, dropped his weapon, and went down. But even as he fell, Cantred's mentor turned to Cantred and unleashed his last breath in a roar. It was no terrified shriek of the dying and scared, but instead one final challenge thrown to the Chaos Gods. Brock collapsed and lay still, but his final bellow echoed through the mountains and walls of the Varen Spire, announcing him in death as the great lion he'd been in life. The reverberation of it thumped in Cantred's chest, filling him with strength and pride. There was no rage for his fallen chieftain. The death of the man he looked up to all his life merely filled him with pride and love for the glory and excess of battle. He felt the strength of his tribe fill him, and then, only then, did he raise his bone axes and set his gaze on the demon and her consort. Cantred swung with nothing but channeled might, his mind blank to better throw himself into the motions of death. It felt almost like a dance. His axes swung and the demon's claws batted them aside, but he was not so easily deterred this time. He swung again and again, his strength increasing with every blow, forcing her to fall back, her glowing eyes widening with... Was that glee? Yet again he found himself entranced by her. Only this time, rather than stupefy him, it drove him forward, into the dance. Finally, he swung with such intensity it knocked her claws away, and on the next strike he jumped high as he could, and his axe found demon's flesh. The fangs of the long-dead Timberwolf buried themselves in her neck. He landed on his feet and looked up to survey the surely fatal blow. She never screamed. She only whispered. Her lips barely moved, and Cantred thought he'd need to strain to hear. But the words reached his ears with ease.
Welcome.
The demon fell from her steed, convulsing twice before evaporating into lavender smoke. It swirled on the breeze, and Cantred watched it, entranced. When it dissipated, he looked at the hulking man in the alabaster armor. How long had Cantred simply stood there, jaw open and gazing at smoke? Those whips the demon's consort carried could have easily flayed his skin from the bone in the time he'd wasted. But instead the warrior had simply rolled them up and tied them to his belt. The man adjusted his helmet, almost as if tipping a cap, and nodded. "Brother," his voice came out in a clear musical tone. Tenor. Cantred had never heard that word before, but he knew it fit now. "Slaanesh rewards her children, when all is said and done. Lead these rabble well, and see your glory won." He nodded, and the sinuous steed he rode turned and loped away. Cantred had no urge to follow, so he surveyed the ruins. The demons were retreating, fading to indigo shadows in the gathering twilight. Beast Speaker Ugolo was tending to the prowler. It bled from a dozen ragged cuts, but still licked her hand and rumbled its version of a purr. Tenyet, the prey taker, was trying to stand and failing, as one of the massive fiends had sliced his thigh to the bone. Others were moaning in injury, or surveying the dead. "Brock! Brock has fallen!" cried a fellow plains runner, pointing to their dead chieftain merely paces away from Cantred. Scattered exclamations rippled through the group, as one by one they turned to the first Fang Gantool for guidance. Cantred turned to him too, but saw the grizzled warrior's gaze fixed back on him, eyes wide in wonder. Puzzled, Cantred made to walk toward the others to see what was wrong. and covered the distance in 3 easy bounds. Gasps echoed around him. Gantul simply bowed and pointed to a fallen fiend. A feast! Cantred has caught the eye of the Great Devourer. The gasps turned to cheers, and the group started sawing at the monstrosity to more easily bring it home. Cantred looked down. His legs were not his legs. They had lengthened and grown an extra joint. His feet were claws, and everything below where his knee had been was morphed into bony springs and darkened to a deep violet. This was it. The prophets had been right, but incomplete. The great hunt was real, and the cycle of predator and prey could carry you to the Great Devourer, yes, but only if you mastered it, if you devoted yourself to perfecting the form. The hunt was in truth a dance, the predator partner to the prey. Cantred would show them. He would teach them all what he'd seen, what he'd learned from the heart demon's whisper.
Welcome.
So there you have it. That's my version of a battle report. I'll try to do a few more of these in the future. Until then, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the story. Until the next time, may all your rolls be crits.